Hello horror movie lovers, I'm Trenton and I love movies just like you, obviously. So I watched both the original My Bloody Valentine from 1981 as well as the remake of My Bloody Valentine from 2009. Because it's February, the month of love, the very end of February, but nonetheless it's pretty therapeutic seeing couples get killed. My expectations for the original were pretty high. I remember loving this movie every time I've watched it in the past. Last time I watched it was like 2 to 3 years ago, but if y'all know me, y'all know my memory is shit sometimes, so I just wanted a little refresher. My expectations for the remake were pretty neutral. I don't remember this movie like at all. It feels like a fever dream because I know 100% for a fact that I've seen it, but I couldn't even tell you what happens in the movie besides like one scene, and even then I wouldn't be able to accurately explain it. But did the movies meet my expectations? The original did. I absolutely love this movie. Dare I say one of my favorite 80s horror movies. Actually, don't quote me on that because I don't fully feel confident saying that since I feel like I haven't seen enough 80s horror movies to confidently make a statement like that just yet. I've seen a good chunk, but still, just forget that I even made that statement. I didn't say that. But nonetheless, I still really like this movie. Now, did the remake meet my expectations? It didn't. This movie was bad, like really bad, and that's coming from someone that always plays devil's advocate when it comes to remakes. I tend to enjoy remakes majority of the time, but in this case, oh yeah, no.
Everyone's entitled to one good scare.
20 years ago in the sleeping mining town of Valentine Bluffs, a fatal mining disaster occurred on Valentine's Day while some of the crew was decorating for a party. The sole survivor of the accident killed the remaining crewmates and warned the town not to celebrate Valentine's Day again. When a group of teenagers decides to defy that order, a murderous maniac in mining gear begins dispatching townsfolk in bloody and creative ways. Tom returns to his hometown on the 10th anniversary of the Valentine's Night massacre that claimed the lives of 22 people. Instead of a homecoming, Tom finds himself suspected of committing the murders, and it seems like his old flame is the only one that believes he's innocent. The first half of this video will be spoiler free, then the last half will contain spoilers. Don't worry, I will give you a warning before we enter spoiler territory. The original has a lot of characters, but there's no sense of who the main character is until like the last 20 to 25 minutes. But I liked pretty much all the characters, and feel since you don't know who the main character is throughout majority of the runtime, it does make the movie more suspenseful not knowing who's safe, and adds to the suspense of not knowing who could be next to die. The characters in the remake are so boring, I didn't like any of them. Tom and Sarah technically are both main characters, but I didn't find either of them to be interesting whatsoever, just bland. Axel, Sarah's husband, was also not interesting in the slightest, bland as well. There really isn't much to say about the characters in both movies, but I'm definitely going to give the point to the original for at least having likable characters. The story in the original is very simple but still effective, but I'm a little biased because slashers are my favorite subgenre of horror. I say this every single video where I talk about a slasher. Y'all get the point by now. But slasher-centered stories in general just tend to always have my attention and my interest. The writing is pretty decent, but nothing unique or special at all. Again, this is a slasher movie, an 80s slasher movie at that, so it's not really anything that hasn't been done before. I mean, the movie came out 42 years ago. The story in the remake is fine. I just don't find it to be that intriguing. It's simple just like the original, but also tries to be more complex, and it just doesn't land for me. It's also just not as effective as the original since I didn't feel any attachment to the characters the story was centered around. The writing is quite bad, really bad actually. Pretty much everything in regard to the writing of this movie is bad. In terms of the characters, in terms of the decisions that they make, they're comically stupid during moments that are supposed to be serious, but it doesn't come off serious at all. In terms of just the story overall, etc., the writing of the movie almost makes it completely unwatchable in my opinion. This point's gonna have to go to the original for obvious reasons, of course. The cinematography in the original is simple as well. It's nothing unique, fun, or special stylistically. It's just your standard straightforward slasher movie. Now, when it comes to the remake, the 3D gimmick, I appreciate the ambition. I appreciate that they heavily wanted to hone in on the 3D aspect, which was pretty popular during this time. But unfortunately, it didn't land. This movie, even without the 3D gimmick, is just ugly. The movement felt like AI and so unnatural. I'm pretty sure that's just because of the 3D camera itself causing the movie to just naturally have a higher frame rate, but nonetheless, I still hated it. It's extremely noticeable and distracting with both the action scenes and dialogue scenes, but specifically the dialogue scenes. It just feels so unnatural. It feels uncanny. It feels like AI, and I just couldn't look past it. The original takes this one as well. I mean, this all comes down to preference and whether or not you mind if a movie looks not good. The effects in the original are so good and effective, it's actually mind-boggling that they're all practical, which is always appreciated, and the kills themselves are just fun overall. The effects in the remake. Ew. They're definitely hit or miss. When it comes to the aftermath of the kills, they actually looked really good, but the kills in action looked so bad, it's noticeably VFX heavy in a bad way. Again, the ambition of the 3D aspect was great. The ideas behind the kills were there and were fun and cool, but the execution was not the best. I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe they were intentionally wanting to make the kills look terrible. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe I just don't get it. This point's gonna have to go to the original. I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory, but again, I do think the ideas behind the kills in the remake were fun and cool, but the execution just wasn't good. The tone in both movies wasn't necessarily lighthearted, but there are certain aspects in both movies that did make the tone not feel entirely dark, but also not feel entirely comedic. In the original, majority of the comedic moments come from the characters and their dynamics with one another. They are so wholesome and silly and feel like real people. Since I did find all the characters to be likable in their own way and felt like pretty much all of their deaths were undeserving, it did add more weight to the movie, at least for me. The fact that the kills and the carnage are intercut with the comedic moments makes the movie still feel serious, enough to be taken seriously as a horror movie. Now, when it comes to the remake, it's also comedic, but in a bad way. That's mainly due to the terrible writing. There are some scenes in this movie that are so stupid, but are taken so seriously to the point where you couldn't help but just laugh at how stupid it was at times. And that's just in terms of the story. When it came to the characters, I felt literally no emotional weight or attachment whatsoever. Also, the 3D gimmick itself was just laughably bad. The movie was comedic in a bad way. Like, I'm not laughing with you, I'm laughing at you. This point's gonna go to the original for obvious reasons. Again, the original is around an hour 30 minutes and the movie breezes by for me personally. I was able to get through the movie with no problems at all and was entertained for majority of it besides a couple lulls towards the beginning and the middle. The remake is around an hour 40 minutes and it felt way longer. I honestly thought the movie was 2 hours plus. That's what it felt like. The movie drags. I wasn't even able to watch the movie in one sitting. I fell asleep the first time and almost fell asleep again the second time as the movie was ending, but I surprisingly pushed through to the end. Not gonna lie, I was contemplating not even finishing the movie and just turning it off, but remembered it was February and I needed to do a themed video for the month of love. And finally, this point is gonna go to the original as well. The life lesson that I learned after watching My Bloody Valentine 1981 was that communication is very important. And the life lesson that I learned after watching My Bloody Valentine 2009 was that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I mean, this is very much a clean sweep. My Bloody Valentine 1981 wins. Literally every aspect about this movie clears the remake. Overall, both movies are entertaining, one being more entertaining and enjoyable than the other, while the other has its moments, but is outweighed by its many flaws. I'm gonna give the original My Bloody Valentine an 8 out of 10, and I'm gonna give the remake of My Bloody Valentine a 3 out of 10. We are now entering spoiler territory. If you haven't seen My Bloody Valentine 1981 and My Bloody Valentine 2009, watch them, then come back to the video, or if you simply don't care about spoilers, keep on watching. In this portion of the video, I break down the movies, go more in depth with my likes and dislikes, as well as my favorite scene, favorite kill, and least favorite kill from both movies. Again, we are now entering spoiler territory. Inside a mine shaft, a female miner takes off her gear in front of another miner. When the woman performs a striptease, the miner pushes her onto a mining pickaxe, killing her. Mayor Hanniger of Valentine Bluffs, a Canadian mining town, reinstates the traditional Valentine's Day dance, which has been suspended for 20 years. The dance is stopped 20 years ago after an accident in which 2 supervisors left 5 miners in the mines to attend the dance. Because they forgot to check the methane gas levels in the mining tunnels, there was an explosion that caused the mining tunnel to cave in and trap the miners. Harry Warden, the only survivor, resorted to cannibalism to survive and went insane from the ordeal. The next year, he murdered the 2 supervisors who left their posts the previous year, cut out their hearts, and placed them in Valentine candy boxes, with a note from Harry warning the town never to hold the Valentine's Day dance ever again or he will commit more killings. Warden was placed in an insane asylum and the accident was forgotten, so the dance resumed. A group of young residents is excited about the dance. Gretchen, Dave, Hollis, Patty, Sylvia, Howard, Mike, John, Tommy, and Harriet. Sarah, Axel, and the mayor's son TJ are involved in a tense love triangle. Mayor Hanniger and the town's police chief, Jake Newby, receive an anonymous box of Valentine Valentine chocolates containing a human heart, and a note warning that murders will begin if the dance proceeds. That evening, resident Mabel is murdered by a mining-geared killer in a laundromat, and her heart is removed. Newbie publicly reports that she died of a heart attack to prevent a panic. He contacts the mental institution where Harry Warden was incarcerated, but they have no record of him. Hanniger and Newbie cancel the dance, but the town's youngsters decide to hold their own party at the mine. A bartender warns them against it, but is killed by the miner while trying to set up a dummy miner to scare the group. At the party, the miner brutally kills Dave. His heart is subsequently found boiling in a pot of hot dogs being prepared in the kitchen. Shortly after, Sylvia is impaled on a shower head by the miner. When the others realize Dave and Sylvia have been murdered, they contact authorities. But several of the partygoers have already decided to enter the mines for fun. Newbie rushes into the mines with the police to rescue them. The miner impales a large drill into Mike and Harriet and shoots a nail gun into Hollis's head. Horrified, Howard flees. The remaining four try to climb to the top with the ladder but discover a dead beheaded Howard. While finding their way out, Axel drowns and Patty is killed by the miner. The miner chases TJ and Sarah and a fight ensues. The miner is revealed to be Axel, who faked his demise. A flashback shows that Axel's father was one of the supervisors killed by Harry Warden. As a child, Axel witnessed Harry Warden murdering his father and tearing out his heart, which traumatized him. TJ hits Axel with a rock, resulting in the tunnel collapsing, which traps Axel as Newbie and the police arrive to rescue TJ and Sarah. Chief Newbie reveals to them that Harry Warden died 5 years earlier. TJ and Sarah hear rescuers shout that Axel is still alive, and they rush back to the scene. They watch as Axel frees himself from the debris by amputating his trapped arm. He runs deeper into the mine, shouting threats that he and Harry Warden will return and murder everyone in town, and mumbling about Sarah being his bloody Valentine. It seems to be implied that Axel's words are just words of insanity and blood loss, which it is also implied that he's dying from. The film ends with Axel laughing maniacally as a ballad for Harry Warden plays over the film's credits. On Valentine's Day 1997, 6 miners are trapped underground by an explosion at the Hanniger mine in the small mining community of Harmony. By the time rescuers reach the miners, they find only comatose Harry Warden still alive. Further investigation reveals that Warden killed the other miners to conserve oxygen. Tom Hanniger, son of the mine's owner, is blamed for the explosion as he forgot to vent the methane lines that caused the collapse. 1 year later, Warden has awakened from his coma and is now murdering as an act of revenge. He starts by killing numerous patients and staff at the hospital where he was a patient, leaving a victim's heart in a box of chocolates. While Tom, his girlfriend Sarah, their friends Irene and Axel, and other teenagers party inside the mine. Warden, wearing mining gear and a gas mask, attacks them with a pickaxe. Sarah, Irene, and Axel escape, but Tom is left behind with Warden. Sheriff Burke arrives and shoots Warden before he can kill the severely traumatized Tom, but Warden staggers away deeper into the mine. 10 years later, Tom returns to Harmony after his father dies. He's selling the mine, which angers mine manager Ben Foley. Axel, now the town's sheriff, has married Sarah but is having an affair with their co-worker Megan. At the motel where Tom is staying, a masked assailant murders Irene and 2 other people. Camera footage from the scene reveals the killer dressed as a miner, starting rumors that Warden has returned. Axel receives a chocolate box containing Irene's heart. Meanwhile, Tom reconnects with Sarah and apologizes for his 10-year absence. Looking for Foley in the mine, Tom is locked inside a utility cage by the miner, who murders the worker accompanying Tom and vanishes before help arrives. Tom insists that Warden has returned, but Axel reveals that Foley and Sheriff Burke found the killed Warden after his attack 10 years ago. The group visits the woods where Warden's body was buried, but find that the grave is empty. Tom resolves to track down and stop Warden. Searching the woods, he finds the shack that Axel and Megan have been using for their affair. That night, the miner kills Foley and leaves his body in Warden's grave. Axel realizes the killer must be one of the few people aware of the grave, and he becomes increasingly suspicious of Tom. The miner attacks Sarah and Megan, killing Megan just before Axel arrives. Sarah is hospitalized with minor wounds. The miner then kills former Sheriff Burke as well as the maid of Axel in Sarah's home. Tom shows up at the hospital, telling Sarah he has to show her something he found in Axel's cabin. She checks herself out and accompanies Tom. As they drive, Tom suggests that Axel is the killer. Axel calls and urges Sarah to get away from Tom, whom he says is the killer. Axel has discovered that Tom spent the last 7 years in a mental institution. Tom becomes increasingly agitated and Sarah, believing Axel, grabs the wheel and crashes the car before escaping into the woods. Sarah hides in Axel's cabin. There she discovers evidence of Axel's affair in a tower of empty Valentine gift boxes. The miner appears and chases her into the mine. When Axel arrives and Sarah grabs his gun, Tom shows up, and Sarah holds the 2 men at gunpoint as they each accuse the other of being the killer. Tom, however, mentions the way Megan was killed, killed, inadvertently revealing he's the killer. As Sarah points the gun at him, Tom hallucinates, revealing the miner is his split personality. A flashback shows him digging up Borden's mining gear and committing the murders. After a struggle, Sarah shoots Tom, and the bullet strikes a fuel tank, which explodes. Sarah and Axel are rescued from the resulting cave-in. Tom also survives, murdering the rescue worker who finds him and escaping in the worker's gear. Then the movie ends. Honestly, the whole structure of the original is pretty interesting. All of our core characters literally don't know there's a killer on the loose until like the third act, while random residents in the small town are getting killed throughout the movie. But the third act itself was okay. I do think it was a little bit rushed, and that's only because you're kind of just there waiting for the core characters to figure out there's a killer on the loose while the viewer already knows this information. They don't end up finding out there's a killer until it's too late, and still that's during the middle of the third act whenever they're already in the mine. The ending itself was also just okay. I feel the twist wasn't really deserved. I mean, there's no way the viewer could have even figured out what the twist was because it wasn't hinted at or suggested at all throughout the movie. It was literally just a random scene added towards the end. It just felt like a twist just for there to be a twist, and I found it to not really be impactful at all. Now, when it comes to the remake, like I said earlier, the third act and the ending are terrible. I hated it. There's also a twist in this movie, and that's pretty much the same twist as the original. This twist also not being impactful. But when it came to this one, it was really obvious what the twist was going to be if there were to be a twist. He was literally always at or around the area where the victim was before they got killed. Also, I mean, you could clearly tell it was a man from their build too, so it's like, okay, that definitely narrows down the suspects. There are just so many instances of bad writing in the movie. I'm just gonna give 2 examples so the video isn't too long. In the opening, when the killer goes on a killing spree in the mine, Sarah, Axel, and Irene are about to escape, but before they do, the killer throws the pickaxe at the car, causing it to burst through the front windshield, but Sarah literally centers herself in the middle of the car, so the pickaxe almost pierces through her face. Like, look at this. Why would she do that? And how the did glass not get in her eye? The other instance would be the grocery store scene with Sarah and her husband's mistress, the button. The emergency button in the room that they run into that she chooses to press whenever the mistress gets taken by the killer. The button wasn't out of reach. The button was right next to the door they just entered. She was right next to the door, but she didn't think to quickly press the emergency button while the killer was trying to break down the door until it was too late. What the That was probably the worst case of bad writing in the movie, to where I literally was about to turn the movie off because that was terrible, and such a terrible way for a genuinely great suspenseful scene to end. The fact that a movie from the 80s that came out 28 years before has tremendously better effects is actually quite embarrassing. Off the top of my head, the only instance where I think the remake is on par with the original in terms of effects is the aftermath of the woman that Axel was cheating on his wife with. I honestly forgot her name, that's why I haven't said it. That did get an audible whoa and evil smirk from me, not gonna lie. Very gnarly, but that's probably one of the only good memorable moments from the movie. My favorite scene from the original would probably have to be the scene with the falling mining suits. I just love this scene. It's so campy, over the top, and silly. I can't help but love it. Her boyfriend going to get some beer, her hearing a noise thinking that it's him, all the suits falling from the ceiling, a hooked body falling from the ceiling, her shrieking, the killer coming up from behind, grabbing her and impaling the back of her head onto the shower head, causing water to spray out of her corpse's mouth. Just everything about this scene I love. The suspense, her scream, how over the top it is, etc. My favorite scene in the remake would definitely have to be the grocery store scene up until a certain point. I genuinely really love this scene. The suspense is there and the chase is actually really good. My adrenaline kicks in every time I see this scene. The wife and her husband's mistress closing the grocery store for the night. The killer attacking both of them, chasing them to a room in the back of the store, them trying to sneak out the window in the room, the killer somehow getting outside the window before they're able to escape, grabbing the mistress, killing her, then the wife pressing the emergency button in the room to alert the police. When she literally could have just pressed the button right as she entered the room and the mistress most likely wouldn't have died. This is actually pretty rare for me, but I don't have a least favorite scene from the original. Normally, right after I finish a movie, I know exactly what my favorite and least favorite scenes are, but in this case, I don't. But if I had to pick, I guess I could just say any dialogue scene that wasn't eventful or important. My least favorite scene in the remake is the third act plus the ending as well. I just disliked it as a whole. I didn't like a single aspect of it. I found it to be very uninteresting, and the third act should be one of, if not the most interesting and eventful parts of the movie. I'm honestly stuck between between the shower kill and the accidental kill on the ladder in the original, but I'ma have to go with the shower kill. I just found it to be such a disturbing and effective visual. My favorite kill in the remake would have to be the mistress, specifically the aftermath, since her kill is off screen. There's plenty of on-screen kills in the movie, but the 3D aspect and the fact that they rely predominantly on VFX kind of ruins how effective they are, in my opinion. When Sarah and Axel go to check on the mistress to see if she's alive after being taken by the killer and stumble across her blood-soaked body with her heart ripped out and the words "Be mine forever" written in blood above her body, I genuinely found that quick moment to be way more impactful than majority of the other actual deaths in the movie. My least favorite kill in the original would have to be the couple that got impaled off screen. It was so simple and I just kind of wish we actually got to see them get impaled. My least favorite kill in the remake would probably have to be the prostitute's death. The lead up was fine, but the writing was just not the best and the choices that she was making didn't really make a lot of sense. She would have honestly had a better chance of surviving if she just made a run for it instead of using the cage-like bed frame as a barrier between her and the killer, who has a pickaxe. Plus the spatter pattern also didn't make sense at all. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos from me, and make sure to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. Alright, horror movie lovers, I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.